Hello everyone, this is Nambernan, and today we'll be doing a quick little video talking about a recent metagame, or I shouldn't say metagame shift, but an interesting little mod that I've been happy to say I've been using. So, user Molnitz and XYZ, both very prominent ladder players, have been experimenting with a new form of Sandless ground that uses a mod that you wouldn't expect. Now, you might be looking at my team and saying, there's nothing unusual about this seems like your standard Sandless ground team. Well, allow me to show you a Pokemon that you wouldn't expect. Trapinch. So, Trapinch offers a very unique thing, and you might be remembering that in one of my earlier videos, where I did I believe it was a hard mode ground, I was talking about a Sandless team that I was using as well, but it had Palisand and Dugtrio. Now, Trapinch has a very similar theory as Dugtrio, where this is obviously a fatter team. It's a bit semi-stallish, and you might be wondering, why would you use a Trapper? Trappers in teams are generally supposed to do one thing, and that is to remove a threat that otherwise dismantles the entire team. Or it's to revenge kill a threat that might KO one of your threats. Or what if you're defensive Pokemon? Because as most people who have used stall or semi-stall before, if you lose one of your Pokemon, the entire team tends to fall apart. So even giving up one slot to make sure that your consistent core doesn't fall apart is very much worth it. And in Trapinch's case, Trapinch has access to First Impression. Now, First Impression is a move that's very good against grass types, which would serve a very big threat to ground teams as usual. But we already have a lot of neutralities to ground, so you might be wondering, what in particular is this for? There's a lot of Pokemon that it's for, actually. And it's not just for grass types, it's also for dark types, some psychic types. Basically, anything that is weak to Bug, which is actually a shockingly large amount of Pokemon, those are Pokemon that are heavily targeted by First Impression. And they also tend to be Pokemon that can't switch out of Arena Trap. So, unlike Dugtrio, Trapinch can actually successfully come in and one-shot a threat without having to worry about priority or anything else like that. So imagine, if you will, a 37% HP Kyurem that could sweep your team, and you're very lucky that your Iron Treads was able to get it low. None of your other Pokemon can deal with it, but Trapinch could deal with it, even if it has Dragon Dance stacks or anything like that. Or if it has access to Ice Shard or something like that. It can still outspeed it and kill it with First Impression and a Choice Band. That is something that Dugtrio does not have the luxury of doing. Now, Dugtrio does have Sucker Punch, but having +2 priority means stuff like, for example, other Sucker Punches, like Bisharp Sucker Punch, for example, can get stuffed by it. Dragapult Sucker Punch can also get stuffed by it, but you won't really use it against Dragapult that much. Super fast or super stacked up Dragon Dance Roaring Moon sets also get absolutely destroyed by this set. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon that get messed up by this particular mod. And also, trapping in general is just extremely powerful. And usually, it's banned. For example, Shadow Tag is still banned in this generation, even though I don't even think any of its good users are here. But it is still banned. But Arena Trap isn't, and it's because both Arena Trap Pokemon just aren't good enough to justify banning the entire ability, because it has to be problematic in order for it to be ban-worthy. And while Trapinch and Dugtrio aren't exactly what you would say problematic Pokemon, they can still be annoying on occasion, but Dugtrio isn't even that good this generation. And it's mainly because of the hazard spam, basically making its focus size set, which has chronically been one of its best sets because of its access to reversal, and it being allowed to one-shot like a lot of dark types and stuff. That set has fallen off and also isn't good in this hazard stacking metagame with spikes and rocks running around rampant, and you just get a lot more value from Pokemon that aren't as heavily affected by hazards as Dugtrio is. So Trapinch, I would actually argue, is actually slightly better than Dugtrio. The only thing that it's worse than Dugtrio at is definitely its speed. Now, Trapinch, outside of its ability to use First Impression and Earthquake, is not that strong, unfortunately, and it can't really live a lot either. Because, I mean, it's a baby Pokemon, and in case you aren't aware, this is the first evolution of Flygon, and funnily enough, Flygon and Trapinch share the exact same attack stat. So you are basically hitting like a fully evolved Pokemon, but you do not have the defensive stats to really take a hit or get to a kill. Like, I'm pretty sure almost every single like stray attack can one-shot this Pokemon. There are very few things that can't kill it. For example, like Skarmory Body Press doesn't really one-shot it. But yeah, this thing can be very obnoxious in the right matchups. I can also take advantage of some choice locked Pokemon, but you probably won't run into a situation like that. But anyway, let's talk about the rest of this team. So, this is all just a standard Sandless ground. I got Smackdown Landorus, which is good in conjunction with this in case you get a situation where you smack down a Skarmory, it tries to whirlwind you out, and you accidentally get them trapped by a Trapinch. Because they're knocked down, they're still affected by Arena Trap even though they're a flying type, so they get trapped, and they get EQ'd and die. Because Skarmory cannot one-shot it back. Aside from that, it's also just a very good Intimidate spammer, very decent pivot. Lumberry was something I had on by default because it was the default set, but I did have some other teams and some other attempts without it, but again, I ended up putting it back on because I think some stuff on ladder was running too much status, so I had to put it back. But yeah, also Gliscor. Gliscor is actually one of the main Pokemon that makes Sandless Ground work, and it is a very hotly contested Pokemon. I might have a video in the future talking about some very heated metagame gripes that a lot of people have been having, especially as I've been interviewing a lot of players, which the L-Trank video will be coming out in around 2 weeks, so be sure to look out for that. But yeah, Gliscor is a very controversial Pokemon right now in Monotype. Even on Sandless Ground, it's still seeing a lot of hate, so we'll see how this mon progresses as time goes on. And I will discuss and talk about Heat Rock in a later video. I won't be getting Rex for it because I'm a bit too busy for that, and it's also just very difficult to get Rex for it, so I will be abstaining from trying to participate in that Suspect vote. I have done Suspects in the past, but this one just isn't. I'm not that motivated to try and get an account for it, because I don't really care that much about Heat Rock, so I'll let the others do that. But yeah, standard Iron Tread set, defensive Clodsire, defensive Quagsire. Very standard team. And I'll show you some replays, basically showcasing what this team is capable of. So, here we have a Water team. Here's a problematic Archetype. There's 2 problematic Pokemon for this team. One being Greninja, because of its Ice Beam and Surf combination spam. Very annoying for my team to deal with. And there's also Waterpon, who's also extremely annoying. So let's just play this and see what happens. So I lead off with Trapinch, immediately expecting him to put in Greninja, because Greninja would be a solid lead against this team. But I end up one-shotting it, and it couldn't leave. That is a massive thing, and Dugtrio could not have done that, I will be honest. Dugtrio would have had to have gone down to its Focus Sash, but Trapinch is still at full HP and can come in on a hazard or 2. So these rocks would have just made it so that Dugtrio can't really come back in safely unless I get a good rapid spin off with Iron Treads. But because I'm using Trapinch instead, I'm actually able to come back in for free. So for example, if this Water Pond comes back in, I don't have to worry about it. And my Trapper that can eliminate it will still be alive. Now, I'm not really commentating the rest of this game because this is just very standard fat versus fat gameplay. Well, not really fat versus fat, but it's like just very standard gameplay. There's not really much to say. I just kind of switch around, and I'm just playing semi-stall. Not really a ton to commentate on here. Getting spikes up, and here comes the Ogre Pawn, as I feared. I go into Quagsire, thinking he wouldn't go in there, but he did. So I intimidate Ogre Pawn to try and slow down its offensive prowess. He actually ends up sword stancing in front of the Quagsire. I knew I had to sack something there because I couldn't risk losing my Clodsire so quickly, so I risked him, and again, his Ogre Pawn couldn't switch out, so he's dead. Easily revenge killed, and I still have a good decent chunk of my Pokemon left. So we put in Clodsire, and Clodsire is able to wall this thing, and yeah, that's the entire game. But yeah, that game right there, Dugtrio straight up could not have done that in the same situation. Because as I said, I would have had to have gotten Iron Treads. I had to awkwardly manage Iron Treads to help me even remotely stop Ogerpon. And God forbid this was a Trailblaze set, Dugtrio would have been even more screwed over. So yeah, Trapinch actually was very helpful in helping me win this matchup. Because it puts pressure on Greninja, funnily enough. And you can't just freely use this thing however you like. You have to be careful because Trapinch can just one-shot you. And Ogerpon has to be careful with actually KOing things because it basically gets punished for KOing literally anything. And pair this with hazards constantly wearing them down and make it even easier for Trapinch to one-shot them. Like, it just makes playing into a Sandless team very difficult for your offensive Pokemon. So yeah, having a Trapper is very, very handy on teams like these. But let me show you another replay. So this one is against Dragon. Dragon versus Ground is typically pretty even, I would say. But unfortunately this guy does have Latios, which makes my life a lot harder. So he goes into Archaludon. Archaludon is a non-Scarf set. So we end up getting a Spike. See Quagsire come out. This is full Hazard Stack Garchomp, so... Or no, it's not full Hazard Stack, it's just a Spikes mixed Garchomp, and that upsets me a lot because I lose a lot of HP on my Quagsire, who I wanted to keep alive for Roaring Moon, but thankfully I don't really have to care that much about Roaring Moon because I have Trapinch. So he gets greedy here and tries to click Earthquake. But that does not work out for him. He still keeps trying to put in Draco Meteor. I decide to use Knockoff and KO him subsequently. That way I still have Protect up in case he decides to do something else to me, like put in his Latios. I assume the Latios is Scarfed. I still don't know if it is or not, but I just assume that it is. So I put in Iron Treads to sit in on the Ice Beam and try and figure out if it is Choice Specs. It is not because it did too little damage. So I know it's Choice Scarf now. I put Heavy Slam on the Protect on Dragapult. I click Protect. Now we know it's special, so I go into Quagsire, sacking it since I don't want to keep my Iron Treads too low for dealing with Latios. Because Latios can actually escape Trapinch due to having Levitate, so I can't really reliably check it like that. But yes, I put down another layer of spikes. I just put down all the spike layers in front of the Goodra, since he doesn't really have hazard removal. So it'll be very problematic for him later on. Try to one-shot his Goodra, but it doesn't happen like that. Puts in Archaludon. I accidentally click Smackdown, thinking that he's going to put in Latios, but he did not. So I end up putting in Gliscor as a safety precaution. I use Sword Stance thinking that he might try to switch out at any point, but he just does not, and he tries to 1v1 my Gliscor. So I end up just using the time to Sword Stance because you have to remember Poison Heal is giving me way too much HP. Per turn, it's literally giving me like 32, or not 32, 24% HP. So I'm actually able to wall him a lot better than he's probably expecting me to. So I click protect here. He's gonna try and body press me, but I still won't take that much damage because Gliscor is a very good wall. Body presses me, and as I said, don't take too much damage. Latios comes in, I click protect, expecting a move. He does use Ice Beam once again. I don't really have any good switch-ins into it though, so I go into Clodsire. Clodsire does not take it very well, so we end up sacking him. Here comes Trapinch. Now Latios can leave, as I said before, so I try to predict it, I think. No, I did not predict it. I think I was too uncomfortable trying to predict it at that point, because if I had lost to predict it, would have been over. So I just went with the safe play, which is to click first impression. Goodra comes back, Goodra gets KO'd. Dragon Ball comes in with very little HP. KOs are Landorus, and in comes Trapinch. This Pokemon can also escape, but he chooses not to since the other options are Latios and you know who. So, and look at this endgame situation we have here. Two of his Pokemon that are weak to first impression are both on the field, leaving him with no choice but to actually end up losing to Trapinch late game. But yes. And again, this is something that Dugtrio could not do. Uniquely, Dugtrio could not do this. At all. Dugtrio cannot have that late game situation happen, due to it being worn down by hazards and also just not being strong enough. And also just not having the moves to really power through those types of Pokemon. Because let's say hypothetically that the Latios wasn't a choice set and it was actually combined, Dugtrio could easily get messed up even with a choice band, and if it clicked Sucker Punch, Latios could easily just stall out those turns and just completely make that Pokemon useless in the late game. So just having that guarantee, it's very powerful. But yeah, that's just a little showcase of Trapinch. Make sure... I'm not sure what the future of this Pokemon will be. I think it is very gimmicky. Even after using it, I do think it actually is surprisingly very good. I'd say it's definitely on par or slightly better than Dugtrio, but I wouldn't say that it's a meta Pokemon. But with that being said, because Dugtrio... Actually, I don't... Let me check real quick, hold on. So yeah, after quickly checking, Dugtrio is actually not on the VR, so Trapinch doesn't really have any competition to compare itself with. And honestly, compared to the rest of the ground Pokemon on the VR, I wouldn't even say that it is very comparable to them, because Landorus Therian obviously is still a pretty good Pokemon. Quagsire, as you saw, is still a pretty good Pokemon. Sandy Shocks, Tingaloo, like those Pokemon are still solid, and Gastrodon is the only D rank available, and I'd still say Gastrodon is probably better than Trapinch when it comes to general usefulness. I think Trapinch is just a very hyper-specific Pokemon, which does mean that it does technically qualify for a D rank, but it would feel very, very strange for Trapinch to be D rank, considering it's a baby Pokemon. But Arena Trap is powerful. First impression hits a lot of the good Pokemon in the metagame. I don't know. I think it might have some potential. I wouldn't be against the D rank, frankly. But yeah, that is it for this video. I just wanted to do a quick little discussion about Trapinch while I wait for the Heat Rock suspect to go through, and before I go through the arguments and all that stuff. I'll also give my opinion on the verdict as well once that goes through. But that will be it for me. Be sure to watch out for the L-Trank video in 2 weeks, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.